Have you ever wondered what sustained a gladiator before he entered the arena to fight for his life? It wasn't meat or wine. What really strengthened these men was a food that most people don't even value today: the barley. Yes, that simple grain. But in ancient Rome, it was pure gold on the plate of fighters. They ate so much barley that they even had a special nickname of barley, which means barley eaters. But why so much barley? Because she really gave energy. It was cheap, easy to prepare in large quantities, and most importantly, it helped the body become more resilient. Galen, the gladiator's physician, said that barley helped create a layer of fat under the skin. This fat provided extra protection against cuts and blows during combat. Furthermore, it could be eaten in many ways: in porridge, bread, soups. And it provided constant energy, the kind that keeps you going during heavy training and long fights. Pliny, another important Roman, also spoke well of barley. He said that it was a grain that gave strength and extraordinary resistance. And if two of the greatest scholars of the time said this, it must have worked. For those who think that strength comes only from animal protein, gladiators are there in history to prove otherwise. Hold on. Before I continue, I need your help. YouTube will only share this video with more people if it has a lot of interaction. In other words, without your comment, this knowledge could be buried and never reach those who need it. If this content makes sense to you, comment 1. If you disagree, comment 0 and tell me why. I want to see at least 100 comments here so that YouTube understands that this subject needs to be spread. So comment now and be part of this mission to reveal the secrets of ancient Rome. Now that we understand why barley was so important, here's a curiosity that many people have never heard of. Gladiators drank a drink made from barley. Ashes. That's right. Ash mixed with water or vinegar. Sounds gross? Maybe. But at the time, this mixture was considered a type of mineral supplement. And the reason was simple. It helped strengthen bones and speed up recovery from injuries. And it's not just talk of ancient history, no. Excavations in Ephesus, a city in Turkey, have found high levels of strontium in the bones of gladiators. This element is directly linked to the consumption of vegetable or mineral ash. In other words, they actually used it as a food supplement. Galeno, the doctor who followed many of these fighters, did not mention ashes directly, but he advocated the use of foods rich in minerals. He knew that those who trained hard needed not only energy, but also a strong bone structure to withstand the blows. This simple, no-frills drink was like ancient Roman Gatorade, only made with whatever they had on hand. And as it turned out, it worked. Gladiators didn't have time to take it slow. They needed to be ready for the next fight, and every sip counted. Many people imagine that gladiators devoured huge chunks of meat before going into combat. But the truth is different. Meat was a luxury that barely appeared on their plates. In ancient Rome, meat was expensive and generally reserved for the elite. Gladiators, who were often slaves or prisoners, had limited access to this type of food. When they did eat meat, it was only on a very occasional basis, perhaps after an important victory or at special events. And even then it was simple: meat, goat, chicken, nothing too elaborate. Instead, they focused on the carbohydrates, like the barley we mentioned earlier, because they provided long-lasting and efficient energy. The logic was simple. To train and fight for hours, the body needed light and powerful fuel. And meat, although nutritious, did not deliver this type of energy as efficiently. Milk was even less common. Galen made it clear, milk was more useful for children or sick people. For those who were constantly training like gladiators, he believed that drinking milk could even be a hindrance. According to him, it did not support physical effort and could cause fatigue. In other words, their diet was much more rational than we imagine. No exaggeration, no ostentation. What went on their plate was what really helped in the arena. If meat was rare and milk was rarely used, where did the protein that helped keep those bodies muscular and ready for war come from? The answer lies in what grew in the earth: beans, lentils, and chickpeas. These legumes were a staple of the gladiator diet. They were accessible, cheap, easy to store, and could feed large groups for a long time. But most importantly, they were rich in vegetable protein, fiber, and minerals. Everything the body needed to grow strong and take a beating without breaking down. Galen not only recommended, but also praised this type of food in his writings. He said that foods like lentils and beans provided energy without interfering with digestion, helped build strength, and most importantly, did not make the body heavy. This was essential for a gladiator who needed agility, endurance, and focus. Furthermore, legumes allowed the body to recover more easily after intense training or even after a bloody fight. It was smart food, simple, straight to the point, made for those who lived at the limit of physical effort. No fads, no miracles. The base was plant-based, functional, and efficient. In the midst of so much effort, heavy training, and constant tension, gladiators also had their tricks to recharge their batteries quickly. One of the most practical: dried fruits, such as figs and dates. These foods were the Roman equivalent of a modern energy bar. Small, sweet, easy to carry, and with one important detail: they lasted a long time without spoiling. This made all the difference in the training schools, where the pace was intense and there was little time to stop and eat. In addition to being a quick source of glucose, which gives the body that energy boost it needs, dried fruits also help with digestion and muscle recovery. Galen highlighted dried figs as ideal for those who exercised a lot. They provided that extra boost at the right time, without weighing down the stomach. Another important point: they could even be taken to the arena. In some cases, gladiators would carry these fruits with them while traveling or backstage, during fights, to eat when their bodies showed signs of fatigue. Portable and functional energy that could even fit on their armor belt. It wasn't luxury, it was strategy. Among all the vegetables that were part of the gladiators' diet, one stood out for both its nutrition and its healing power: the cabbage. This vegetable was considered almost magical. Not only did it provide nourishment, but it also helped the body recover. The Romans believed that cabbage could relieve pain, reduce inflammation, and even speed up the healing of wounds. And the best part, it worked both on the plate and directly on injuries. But he didn't walk alone. Other green leafy vegetables were also part of the menu. After the fights, it was common for gladiators to eat generous portions of these foods to replenish nutrients, cleanse the body, and restore physical strength. Pliny the Elder said that cabbage not only nourished, but healed. And Galen reinforced the importance of a varied diet with cereals, legumes, fruits, and vegetables. For him, the secret was balance. Not just grains, not just leaves. Everything in harmony to keep the body strong and free from disease. Deep down, they already knew what modern science only confirmed centuries later. A warrior's health begins with what he puts on his plate. If this content is making sense to you so far, do the following. Give me a signal. Comment 1 below so I know you're with me on this journey. And remember, YouTube only spreads this knowledge if it has a lot of interaction. If you haven't commented yet, now is the time. I want to see this video full of opinions so that this topic continues to reach more people. Even with a simple diet, the gladiators' dish was not completely bland. Garlic, onion, and aromatic herbs were always present, not only to add flavor, but also because of the medicinal properties that the Romans so valued. These ingredients had a dual function. They improved the taste of everyday food and helped the body function better. Garlic, for example, was seen as an ally of blood circulation. Onions were associated with increased resistance and recovery from fatigue. Galen recommended the use of these spices especially for those who trained hard. He believed that they helped to keep the blood healthy and prepared the body for intense efforts. In other words, even in the simplest details, such as the seasoning of a soup or barley porridge, there was intention. Each ingredient had a reason to be there. Gladiators didn't eat just for the sake of eating. Everything had a purpose. Keep the body ready to fight another day. To truly understand the diet of gladiators, we need to imagine the environment in which they lived. They didn't live in normal houses. They lived in training schools, calls gladiatorial games, tough places, focused on turning ordinary men into fighting machines. These schools functioned as true preparation centers. They had training areas, dormitories, bathrooms, infirmaries, and, of course, collective kitchens where all the food was prepared on a large scale. Nothing was improvised. Food was taken as seriously as sword training, and the one who commanded all this was the trainer, the man responsible for buying, training, and keeping the gladiators in shape. He saw these fighters as investments. A strong and healthy gladiator would bring profit in the arenas, bring fame to the school, and attract more bets. Diet was therefore not only a matter of health but also of business. Keeping these men well-fed was a priority. Dishes were carefully planned, and the slaves who cooked followed precise instructions to ensure that each meal had exactly what their exhausted bodies needed. Inside, food was strategy. Every spoonful counted. Inside the gladiator schools, the kitchen was almost as busy as the training grounds. Imagine preparing food every day for dozens, sometimes hundreds of men who were training as if they were going to war. You couldn't afford to make a mistake. These meals were prepared by specialized slaves trained exclusively for this. They knew the right quantity of each ingredient, the ideal cooking time, and followed the lanista's orders to the letter. Because if a gladiator became weak or sick due to poor nutrition, the loss would be great. Everything was made in huge pots with food that would last a long time, was easy to store, and offered maximum energy. There was no room for freshness or waste. The priority was to feed quickly, well, and efficiently. And there was something else. The diet could change according to the fight calendar. Before important fights, some ingredients were reinforced. After, the battles, the focus was on recovery. School physicians such as Galen supervised all this closely. If a fighter needed more strength or was recovering from an injury, the food would change. It was like a barracks, only with the smell of barley porridge in the air. Not all gladiators ate the same. Within the schools, there was a clear hierarchy, and this was even reflected on the plate. The most experienced, most victorious, or most prestigious fighters received special meals. While most followed a simple diet of barley, legumes, and dried fruits, the champions were allowed access to meat, milk, and other rarer foods. It was a way to reward performance and also to keep the best in top shape. These food privileges served as motivation. The newbies knew that if they won, they wouldn't just gain fame, they would also gain more food, more flavor, more respect. Everything was thought of as part of a system. Food sustained the body, status fueled ambition. And in the end, each bite was part of a larger machine, designed to transform ordinary men into living legends in the arena. If this content surprised you, leave a like to strengthen the channel and help more people discover the behind the scenes of ancient Rome. And don't leave there. Click on the video that appears on the screen, because we have another episode with interesting facts that almost no one knows about the lives of Roman soldiers. You will be impressed. See you there.